Welcome to Lesson 1.3: Why Governance Fails in Large Organizations. As organizations grow, governance becomes more necessary but also more difficult. In smaller organizations, leaders can often make decisions quickly and coordinate directly. But as organizations expand, the number of departments, systems, stakeholders, and approval levels increases, making coordination more complex. If governance does not evolve with that complexity, decisions can slow down. Responsibilities can become unclear, and accountability can weaken. Silos and excessive bureaucracy can also turn governance into a source of delay rather than alignment. In this lesson, we will examine the most common reasons governance fails and what leaders can do differently as their organizations grow. The key message is simple: good governance should create clarity, not confusion. As organizations grow, governance becomes harder because complexity often increases faster than governance maturity. Large organizations operate across more teams, functions, systems, and regions. At the same time, technology, risk, regulation, and stakeholder expectations continue to expand. The problem is that governance often remains relatively static while the organization becomes more complex. This creates a growing gap between complexity and governance maturity. As the diagram shows, complexity rises sharply as organizations move from small to medium to large, but governance maturity may grow more slowly. When complexity outgrows the governance model, leaders can lose visibility, alignment, and decision-making effectiveness. The current focus is this: complexity itself is not the problem. Unmanaged complexity is, and the key message is, growth without governance redesign creates governance failure. Another common reason governance fails is fragmentation. As organizations grow, different teams often create their own governance processes. Business, technology, risk, data, AI, and PMO teams may each have their own committees and ways of making decisions. These groups may all be doing useful work. The problem starts when they do not coordinate well with each other. As the diagram shows, each group may focus mainly on its own priorities. This can lead to different decisions, conflicting priorities, and greater risk for the organization. The current focus is simple: too many disconnected governance groups can weaken enterprise alignment. And the key message is, fragmented governance produces fragmented decisions. Another major reason governance fails in large organizations is too many approval layers. Organizations often add reviews and approvals to reduce risk and improve oversight. But when too many layers are added, governance can gradually turn into bureaucracy. As the diagram shows, a decision may move from team review to management review to a governance committee and finally to executive approval. Each additional step takes more time and can also dilute decision ownership. As a result, teams may spend more time waiting for approvals than resolving issues and moving work forward. Governance then begins to feel like an obstacle rather than an enabler. The current focus is simple: control is important, but excessive control can paralyze execution. The key message is, when governance becomes bureaucracy, execution suffers. Another common reason governance fails is unclear decision rights. As organizations grow, many groups may become involved in an important decision. Business, technology, risk, and compliance, the PMO, and executive leadership may all have a role. The problem begins when people are not clear about who has the authority to make the final decision. As the diagram shows, the issue may move from one group to another. Ownership becomes unclear, action is delayed, and accountability becomes weak. Good governance avoids this confusion by clearly defining decision rights. The current focus is this: everyone should understand who recommends, who reviews, who approves, and who remains accountable for the final outcome. And the key message is, clarity in decision rights is the backbone of effective governance. Another reason governance fails is silo thinking. In large organizations, departments such as business, technology, risk, finance, and operations may focus mainly on their own goals. Each function may perform well on its own, but when teams do not share information or coordinate decisions, problems begin. The diagram shows separate silos with weak connections between them. This can lead to disconnected information, conflicting decisions, and weak enterprise alignment. The current focus is that governance fails when collaboration is weaker than organizational complexity. The key message is silos may strengthen individual functions but weaken the enterprise. Another reason governance fails is when it becomes disconnected from strategy. Meetings, reports, approvals, and compliance activities may continue, but they can gradually lose connection with what the organization is actually trying to achieve. As the diagram shows, governance should connect enterprise strategy to execution. But when that connection breaks, teams may focus more on completing processes than on achieving business outcomes. Priorities can become misaligned, investments may move in the wrong direction, and execution can deliver limited business value. The current focus is this: governance must always connect organizational purpose and strategy to execution. Every governance activity should help move the organization toward its strategic goals. And the key message is, when process becomes more important than purpose, governance begins to fail. Governance fails when process replaces purpose. Effective governance depends on visibility. Large organizations may produce many reports, dashboards, metrics, and status updates, but more information does not always give leaders a clearer picture. As the diagram shows, too much detail, delayed reporting, inconsistent data, and hidden risks can create information overload. When leaders cannot clearly see what needs attention, important issues may be missed and decisions can be delayed. The current focus is this: governance requires clear, timely, and decision-ready information, not reporting overload. Leaders need the right information at the right time to make confident decisions. Without that visibility, governance becomes uncertain and reactive. And the key message is, without visibility, governance becomes guesswork. Strengthening governance does not mean adding more committees, reports, or approval layers. That often creates more complexity. Instead, governance should stay connected to enterprise strategy and business outcomes. Decision rights should be clear, unnecessary approval layers should be reduced, and leaders should receive timely, trusted information. As the diagram shows, clear decision rights, streamlined governance forums, trusted information, and accountable execution create effective governance at scale. The current focus is this: governance should enable confident decisions, clear accountability, and faster execution. And the key message is, effective governance is clear, connected, and designed for action. When these elements work together, organizations achieve faster decisions, greater accountability, and stronger execution. Let us conclude Lesson 1.3 by looking back at why governance fails in large organizations. We began by seeing that, as organizations grow, complexity can increase faster than governance maturity. More teams, systems, risks, stakeholders, and approval levels make coordination more difficult. We then looked at fragmentation. Different functions may create their own governance structures, which can lead to conflicting priorities, inconsistent decisions, and greater enterprise risk. We also saw how too many approval layers can turn governance into bureaucracy and slow execution. When decision rights are unclear, ownership becomes uncertain, issues are repeatedly escalated, and accountability becomes weak. Governance can also become disconnected from strategy. Meetings, reports, approvals, and compliance activities may continue, but if they no longer support enterprise priorities, process begins to replace purpose. We also examined the problem of poor visibility. Too much reporting, inconsistent data, delayed information, and hidden risks can make it difficult for leaders to understand what really needs attention. As the diagram shows, these problems can combine and lead to governance failure. The current focus is this: governance should scale with the organization without becoming bureaucracy. And the key message from this lesson is simple: good governance creates clarity, accountability, and coordinated action. In Lesson 1.4, we will explore why enterprise governance matters today.